Hey there, guitar students. Welcome to Volume 4 of the mighty and monthly free metal mailing. And here I am again with you, Brett Miller. And this Wicked Warm-Up and Fire and Steel Shred Lick today is really, believe it or not, going to be more based on warming up your right hand. And of course, there's some tricky left-hand stuff, but really I think the challenge is over here. Or if you're lefty, your picking hand, I'll say. But here's the first one, and this really has to do with doing string jumps and being accurate. Okay, so I'll play it once and I'll put this tab up there, the right string there. So, oops. Perhaps I'd better put the music up here for myself too. Okay, here it is one more time. We'll do it slow. Notice using all 4 fingers here. Now here it's just first and middle. That's the tricky part, is these jumps. I'll do that part again. 9, 10, 10, 11, back to 9, 10, 12, 13, and then another jump back here. Okay, so you want to focus here sonically. The reason that I wrote this one is a lot of times when people are doing the string changes, right, what tends to happen is this. Let's say I'm taking this little segment right here, 9 to 10, and then I got to jump to 10th fret. Now, why would you do that anyway in a solo? Well, is it because if you wanted to say some really big stretch like this, wouldn't be practical at that point to go like a little roll, and see your pinky just can't reach that far. So, say you had a cool lick like that, maybe. Getting that little change clean is important. People tend to do this. They kind of jip the note, the penultimate note, to the change. That kind of a sound. So this exercise really encourages you to think about not jipping this note until the very last second when you're switching it out. So it's more the sound here. It doesn't have to be fast. You don't want that. Okay, and same down here. It's more about using all the fingers though. And it's a little bit of a finger twister. Now, moving on to the Fire and Steel lick here. Okay, now this one is tricky. This one, I'm not going to be doing this blazing fast because, frankly, I would have to practice it a bit too. As I keep telling you guys here, with the metal mailings, it's a little bit more off the cuff, so I don't tend to sit down and practice these too long before I do them. But this one I encourage you to spend some time on. Hey, I may do it too myself. So this is, first of all, what's cool about this is based on triads. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail here, but triads are just little miniature chords, and you can learn about these a lot in the Chordcraft Crash Course if you are so inclined. But for example, if I played this little chord right here, if I go 5, 5, 5, that is an A minor chord, A, C, E. If I do that, of course, up here, that's a D, so that's now a D minor. Okay, so, a little more light in here. So what we do is we create a little lick from those two. I'm only using notes from the A minor scale, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. But the idea is we can use this shape as a launching off point for this little neoclassical kind of a shred lick. They're kind of fun to play. They're challenging in the right hand primarily, but still focusing over here. I'm using each note of the triad as the start. And I'm just following up with this little tag. We can almost call that a sequence. So it's B string, little sequence, E string, little sequence, G string, little sequence, back to, and we're literally just going to be moving this up to the 10th fret, doing the same thing from the D minor. So you can make a lot of cool little licks with this idea. Yeah, just anything you want to do to play around with that. But moving it up, and you just go back and forth. Now, right hand. Let's focus on this a bit. This is tricky, of course. The most obvious thing because of the string skip from the E string to the G string. Right, that's what makes this tough to be clean, because you're moving with that pick a lot. Now, this brings up kind of an interesting point. I encourage you to practice this both starting the whole thing on a downstroke and starting the whole thing on an upstroke. Now, pick direction is an interesting subject because whether you start a lick on a downstroke or an upstroke can oftentimes impact the efficiency of your pick motion, therefore impacting how easy or difficult it is for you to play the lick. So when you have a repeating thing like this over and over, okay, this is something you don't hear as much people talking about, but when you have a repeating thing, oftentimes, frankly, it doesn't matter, because if, for example, I start this on a downstroke, down, up, notice that upstroke puts my pick pretty close to my G string that I have to follow up with, right? So for that move, it's fairly efficient. Down, up, bam. However, if I start this one here, down, the next note up there on the E string, look very carefully at the pick. I have to actually go around the E string and then change directions, which is not super efficient. It becomes almost like an obstacle I have to get around, and then. So for that one, it would be more efficient to actually do an upstroke, because now I'm up in the air, I'm sort of ready to rock here, coming back down either on the B string or, so that, for me, and not just for me, I'd say for most people, if they're used to starting on upstrokes at all, would be more efficient, down, up. But now, the problem is, look, I'm way past my E string, and I have to go past all these strings to hit the G. So that's my point. When you have a repeated lick, a lot of times, you might think you're solving the efficiency problem at first, but then you're invariably going to run into it again somewhere else in that repeated lick. So you don't want to go nuts with it, but I do find that because you have some positive aspects of starting on the upstroke with this lick and some positive aspects of starting with the downstroke, that you do practice both of them. Here's down. Here's the up. Even at a slow pace like that, it's good practice for you to do both. Now, the other thing to avoid with this lick, and I remember years ago when I was trying to play these things before I was as good at picking, one thing that would be a very easy thing to fall into a trap of for me was sort of bouncing the pick up and down. In other words, if I was doing something like this, like, I'll see if I can do it slow. See, I'm kind of moving my pick almost like a bounce. If you try and do this quickly without thinking about it, you might get this kind of bounce, 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 bounce. That's what I would watch out for if I were you when you're practicing this particular lick. All right, you want to, with this one, really stay just up in this plane, right? If we're going to call this a plane this way rather than like kind of going this way. Really watch out for that. And you're going to be keeping that contact, of course, like we would do with any alternate picking. Okay, wrong fret there. So that's the most efficient, and in this particular one too, I also really like to keep my pick very straight. For some things I've talked about where people do this a little bit, if I was going to do maybe a pentatonic 2-note per string, it's actually a little bit more efficient sometimes to have this a little bit more angled. But for this lick, I find I want to keep that pick really just as straight as possible, not angled. Okay, if you look at the pick angle there, fairly straight on, because of all this jumping around alternate picking. And one thing on the left hand with this, again, very easy with this to have something like this happen. A little too staccato, we call that in music. Okay, we want to avoid that. You want to make sure you're not hearing that sound. You want to make sure you have, at whatever speed you're playing this at, a seamless, where each note is exactly the same. You're not jipping any notes like that. So again, don't overdo the speed if you find that you're not getting that tone quality that you want. Okay, that's enough for that one. So enjoy that, and I'll see you next time with Volume 5. All right, keep shredding, everybody.